Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Om Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Acharya Stotra Srimad, His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai, Nama Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Go Bhaktivinda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Mayapur Dham Ki, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki, Ganga Mai Yamuna Mai Ki, Tulsi Maharani Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru Garanga. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 7, Text 23 to 26. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Oh, which one is this? 26, okay. Upari adas chaye loka. Upari adas chaye loka. Bhumer mitrat majasate. Bhumer mitrat majasate. Tesham samstham pramanam cha. Tesham samstham pramanam cha. Bhur lokasya cha varṇaya, burlokasya cha varṇaya, uparyadas-cha ye loka, bhumer-mitrat-majasate, tesham samstam pramanam cha, burlokasya cha varṇaya, uparyadas-cha ye loka, bhumer-mitrat-majasate, tesham samstam pramanam cha, burlokasya cha varṇaya, uparyadas-cha ye loka, bhumer-mitrat-majasate, tesham samstam pramanam cha, burlokasya cha varṇaya. Ladies, nobody? Translation. Upari, on the head. Adha, underneath. Cha, also. Ye, which. Loka, planets. Bhume, of the earth. Mitra Atmaja, O son of Mitra, Maitreya Muni. Asate, do exist. Tesham, there. Samstam, situation. Pramanam cha, also their measurement. Bhulokasya, of the earthly planets. Cha, also. Varṇaya, please describe. Translation. O son of O son of Mitra, kindly describe how the planets are situated above the earth as well as underneath it, and also please mention their measurements as well as that of the earthly planets. Please repeat. O son of Mitra, kindly describe how the planets are situated above the earth as well as underneath it. And also please mention their measurement as well as that of the earthly planets. Purport. Yasmin vigyate sarvam evam vigyatam bhavati. This Vedic hymn declares emphatically that the devotee of the Lord knows everything material and spiritual in relationship with the Lord. Devotees are not simply emotional, as ill-conceived by certain less intelligent men. Their direction is practical. They know everything that is and all the details of the Lord's domination over different creations. So the previous two verses were already done? No, okay, so I'll just go back and do those ones. Starting on 23. Yasmin daśa-vidhaḥ prāṇaḥ sendriyārthendriyas tri-vṛt tvayerito yato varṇās tad-vibhūtīr vadasva. O great Brahmin, you have told me that the gigantic virāṭ form and his senses, sense objects, and 10 kinds of life air exist with 3 kinds of life vigor. Now, if you will, kindly explain to me the different powers of the specific divisions. That was 23. Verse number 24. Yatra putraiś pautraiś naptṛbhiḥ saha gotrajaha praja vichitrakartaya asan yabir idam tatam. O my Lord, I think that the prowess manifest in the forms of sons, grandsons, and family members has spread all over the universe in different varieties and species. Text number 25. Prajapatinam sapatis chaklipe kan prajapatin sargams chaivan visargams cha manum manvantara dipan. O learned brāhmaṇa, please describe how the leader of all the demigods, namely Prajapati Brahma, decided to establish the various manus, the heads of the ages. Please describe the manus also, and please describe the descendants of those manus. There's a short purport. The human race, or Manusya Sara, descends from the manus, sons and grandsons of the Prajapati Brahma. The descendants of Manu reside in all the different planets and rule all of the universe. And that takes us to today's verse. So, in the first, which is at text number 25, it's described here. Please describe how the leader of all the demigods, namely Prajapati Brahma, decided to establish the various manus, the heads of the ages. Please describe the manus, and also please describe the descendants of those manus. So, it's described here that these manus rule the universe, and the purport proper describes the human race descending from Manu, sons and grandsons of Prajapati Brahma. The descendants of Manu reside on all the different planets and rule all the universe. So this is what we're hearing from Bhagavatam, that the human race is ruled over by the descendants of Brahma and the descendants of Manu. So there are some that say that Manu is not relevant now, that these are rules and regulations, laws from the Dark Ages, from medieval times, and they're not appropriate for us now because now we're in the modern age. And it does appear as if we are in a very different age. Now, if you think about it, if you look in Bhagavatam, we don't really see any descriptions of motor car civilization. You hear about chariots and you hear about armies pulling, armies with horses and elephants and so many different things, but you don't really hear about a situation that we see today where people live in small houses, move around in cars made of metal and plastic, sit in offices in front of plastic computers, and just kind of live a very artificial way of life. But of course, nothing has really changed. We're still spirit souls, encaged in bodies, with the same desires. The desires may appear to be different. Like now, we may not desire to have a horse. Instead, we desire the latest Mercedes, you know, convertible or whatever it is. But the actual desire, the act of desiring is still the same. So Manu and his laws are designed, they're designed for basic principles of human life. It makes no difference what age you're in. One has to look at these laws. They may appear to be, some people say, oh, they're barbaric laws. But one has to examine what is the principle behind these laws. And it's described here. The descendants of Manu reside in all the different planets and rule all the universe. So the universe is being ruled today by the Manus and descendants of Manus. We may appear to have escaped that rule by creating our own separate rules, like the governments of today have created their own separate rules of what's right and what's wrong. And of course, as devotees, we know that most of the rules which are set by the governments are actually inappropriate, bogus rules based on a misunderstanding of what human life is and what the goals of human life are. So that's why we've been given the Srimad Bhagavatam, so we can understand what the actual situation is, what reality really is, and how we can live by it. So nowadays we see that governments are passing more and more rules and regulations and laws every day. You know, it used to be, according to the Christians, there were the 10 Commandments, and those were basically the laws of humankind. And laws are basically very simple. Don't murder, don't steal, don't covet other people's wives. Very basic, simple rules which humanity, if we follow those rules, we can live very nicely. And we see actually that in some societies where Dharma is more followed, there's less requirement for a very strict legal system. Like, for instance, in Japan, the Japanese are known for being very self-disciplined. It's described that it's quite common in Japan for children at the age of 5 to walk to school on their own, unaccompanied. Even in places like Tokyo, big cities of Japan, children can freely walk to school without any kind of worry, because the people of Japan understand the importance of childhood, of child protection, of basically following a kind of dharma. There's a word in Japanese called ikigai, I-K-I-G-A-I, ikigai. And ikigai means to find your path, the search for your ideal path. So in Japan, they consider this is basically to make one consider what is life's goal. There is the general goal of life, and then there's your particular goal of life. What is it that you are here for? So, ikigai can be translated as dharma in our philosophy. And the interesting thing is that in Japan, the people, it's not just like we within the Krishna consciousness movement have been introduced to this idea of dharma and following our dharma and trying to be dharmic. But in Japan, the whole society is understanding these principles. And this concept of ikigai, it's very important for them to find what is their purpose in life. What makes you get up in the morning? What motivates you to do anything in life? it's described, the Japanese understand that the longer you wait to try to find your ikigai, the more difficult it is. And the earlier you do it, the easier it is. And actually, in the Vedic culture, this is taught from childhood in the Gurukula. One of the purposes of the Gurukula is Prabhupada describes how the teachers observe the psychological nature of the child, and they engage them. In a traditional Gurukula, academics was not so much an important aspect. The main purpose of Gurukula was to help children find their purpose in life, to find their dharma, to find what it is that they will be able to, thrive, how they will be able to thrive in their lives. So in a traditional Gurukula, there will be all sorts of different activities which the boys would engage in, from cow protection to management to cooking to learning mantras and yagyas and these different things. And because the Gurukula is meant for the Dvijas, the Brahmins, Kshatriyas and the Vaishyas, the teachers are observing how the boys are acting in the different types of activity in the Gurukula, and they can soon see where each particular boy thrives, and then his education can be, can be guided in such a way that their innate nature is brought out, nurtured, and allowed to blossom. So that is the purpose of the Gurukul system. So, like something which is actually in Japan to some degree, this is also there. Another aspect of the schools in Japan is that the students clean the school. One of the first things they do when they arrive in the school is they sweep and clean the school. And it's considered to be an important part of their psychological development, that they learn how to do this humble service. And of course we understand that in Krishna consciousness, one of the keys to understanding Krishna consciousness is humility and engaging in menial service. If one tries to understand Shastra without engaging in menial service, without surrendering oneself to the process, without surrendering oneself to the senior devotees, then one won't be able to gain knowledge. Sometimes I like to give the example of Dhruva Maharaj. When Dhruva Maharaj was meditating on Krishna, he was sitting and he had this form of Krishna in his mind's eye. And when he opened his eye, Krishna was sitting right in exactly the same position, just as he had envisioned him. And he was standing. And Dhruva Maharaj immediately got up and he wanted to offer prayers. But because he was only a 5-year-old boy, he didn't have the means, he didn't have the education to offer the prayers. So the Lord, understanding his predicament, comes forward and touches Dhruva Maharaj on the forehead with his conch shell, and immediately Dhruva's heart is filled with all these prayers in glorification. He's given the intelligence, Krishna gives him the intelligence to bring out all of these things he wants to say. He doesn't know how to articulate it, but the Lord empowers him. So this is education. Without engaging in surrender, without surrendering to the Lord, Dhruva was already surrendered. Without surrendering, the knowledge will just be theoretical. You may be able to chapter and verse quote Shastra, but you won't get the realization. You cannot get the realization unless you have the right kind of attitude. So this is a very important part of education. So in the Japanese schools, to some degree, one of the reasons why Japan is it needs less law enforcement as such, is because the people are brought up to understand the importance of acting properly. And in many aspects of Japanese life, that's there. So there's another Japanese concept which I found very interesting, and that's kintsugi. Kintsugi is, what happens is sometimes you have a piece of china, some piece of ceramic pottery which you may have inherited from your family, it's got some history, and you drop it and it breaks. It's like, oh no, you've broken, the china has broken. So kintsugi, what they do is they take that broken china and they repair it with gold. They have a gold kind of pegament, like a glue, and they reassemble the pot with this gold, and it makes it even more beautiful than it was before. And it's considered to be, in Japanese culture, it's considered to be part, it like demonstrates the progression of life and how we are subjected to various trials and tribulations, and they make us stronger and more beautiful. By going through difficulties, we become stronger and more beautiful. So by repairing the pottery with gold, it becomes more beautiful. And I remember when I first joined, I was 16 years old, and for 6 months I was in the temple. And then I was having a hard time because I had this vision of spiritual life, living a kind of very esoteric life as a monk, and I ended up doing things which weren't very monk-like. And so I ran away for a few weeks, and I went to live with some of my friends. My friends used to live in a teepee, like a red Indian teepee on the top of a hill, and we would cook on open fires and kind of live very simply. I was very attracted to simple living. And what I was getting in the temple wasn't my idea of what simple living was. So then, eventually I realized I'm being an idiot. I'm supposed to be a devotee, I'm supposed to be surrendering to Krishna, and here I am, sitting on top of a hill, just spacing out, listening to rock and roll. So I went back to the temple. And then I overheard a conversation, and some devotees were saying that if you leave Krishna consciousness, it's like a crack in the china. It can never be repaired. There will always be that crack. You will always be faulty. And I was like, no, I've blown it completely, and my life is ruined. I'm never going to be perfect because I left the association of devotees, and I gave up my spiritual practice. What is it called? Apostasy. When you become apostate, means you leave your spiritual practice, you give it up, and you go back to your old ways. So I remember for a very long time, I always thought to myself, I thought of myself as being hopelessly fractured, and then I came across this concept of kintsugi, how actually this fracture is just a part of life's rich tapestry. And one of the sayings that goes along with ikigai is fall down 8 times, stand up 9. So in other words, we may have so many failures. If we dwell on those failures, then we're not going to get anywhere. But if we stand up again, we say, I failed, but I'm not going to fail again. Stand up again. So you fall down, however many times you may fall from your path, there's always the opportunity to stand up again and continue, move forward. And of course there's that old English saying that failures are the pillars of success. So the more failures that you have, the more pillars you have to build a stronger edifice. So that's interesting how in societies where people are more aware of their dharma, are more aware of their purpose in life, there's less need to enforce laws. It's described actually There was a famous saying, I can't remember what it was now. But even when I was growing up in the 60s in London, I would walk to school on my own. And most of the kids in the 60s would walk to school on their own. In fact, when I was growing up in the summer holidays, we would go out in the morning after breakfast, and sometimes we wouldn't come back home again until, we were told you have to come home before it gets dark. So maybe 9 o'clock in the evening we would come home. All day long out, parents didn't know where we were, no mobile phones. Nobody knew what was going on. But we would play all day, and then we'd come home. If you came home after dark, then you got shouted at quite badly. But otherwise, if you came home before dark, you were fine. So these were days, more innocent days. And it's funny because it appears to be that the more we move into the future, the more technology has developed. The internet, telecommunications. I remember there was a story in the early days in the temples. There was something invented called, what was it called? Telex. I'm not sure if it was telex. The telex machine had a little strip of paper, and as you typed something in, each letter would appear on the strip of paper. Today is Ekadashi or something like that. You could send it to a temple, and and like it was like instant communication. You didn't need to pick up a phone. It was just coming straight across. So the devotees were like excited. Oh, Prabhupada, we should get this. And Prabhupada said, you will just use it for prajalpa. Right? That was before fax machines. Telex was before that. It was just a little strip of paper about 1/2 inch wide. And as you type, those letters would appear. So if you wanted to write something, you'd have the huge long strip of paper, and you'd have to read it, one after the other, And imagine, Prabhupada said that would lead to prajalpa. What to speak of now, right? How much prajalpa is being generated instantly. You've got these keyboard warriors who, have got an opinion on everything. And they may not have any kind of clue what they're talking about, but they print it out, and then it's like, yes, this is my opinion. So, before all this technology, people lived simpler lives, and there was less crime. But this technology, which is so-called helping us advance, in society, is actually, the evidence shows that it's actually making things worse. You can't trust anybody anymore. You can't let your kids go out on the street on their own anymore. It's a whole, of course, whether you can or you can't, in the mindset of the people, you can't. Everyone's very much restricted. So, this is one of the reasons why Prabhupada, he wanted us to be independent. There's one place where he says, we are ISKCON, a society to be independent from outside help. He wanted us to be completely independent, and we see how in his management systems, he very much pushed this. For instance, in the West, he wanted all the temples to be individually managed. Your ultimate authority was the temple president, then there was the treasurer and the secretary, and in every temple, the temple president was free to develop Krishna consciousness in his area based on the interactions with the local people, the local customs, the local laws. Because every country has its different legal systems, its different societal norms. So Krishna consciousness has to be woven into that society based on what the people can accept. And you have to take the mentality of the people and introduce Krishna consciousness in such a way that it's acceptable to them. And that, it's an art to do that. And Prabhupada would leave it up to the individual temple presidents who in general were from that place. He encouraged, in the very beginning we know that devotees came from the United States to Europe and they began the temples there. And of course that was essential because they had been given Krishna consciousness by Srila Prabhupada, and they had to transmit that Krishna consciousness all over the world. But Prabhupada very much encouraged that as much as possible, get the locals, preach to the locals, bring them up, and then they themselves, knowing their prabhudatta desh, the situation that they're in, they can then fine-tune Krishna consciousness in a way that people will accept it. So that's one way in which Prabhupada wanted us to be independent. Another way was with the schools. The very first Gurukul was set up in Dallas, in Texas, but the American legal system made it almost impossible to have a Gurukula. In the days, back in the early days of the 70s, 60s and 70s, when the deprogrammers came, there were, parents were upset that their sons and daughters were taking to Krishna consciousness, and they would find these people who would deprogram them, who would try and remove their Krishna consciousness from them. And where was I going with that? Huh? Which system? Oh yeah, that's right. So there's this one famous deprogrammer, Ted Patricks. He was describing how, the kids eat off the floor. He said, we treat our dogs better than they treat their kids. How can we have, how can you, these primitive barbarians, eating with their fingers off the floor. This is just barbaric. So Prabhupada recognized that American culture is not going to accept teaching children menial service, simple living and high thinking. They're not going to accept it. So then he decided we have to bring the Gurukul to India. So there's a whole nother thing. Okay, so then, where are we? Oh yeah. So then Prabhupada in the last purport, he describes how the devotee knows everything, material and spiritual, not just sentimental. So there were many people, especially here in India, they considered the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya to be sentimental, emotional based teaching with no substance to it. But Prabhupada makes a very good point here that the devotee is not just sentimental, it's not just based on emotion, it's very practical. So one of the key teachings that Srila Prabhupada gave was for us to be independently intelligent. So that's kind of like it sounds a bit dicey, a bit dodgy, independently, independent, that word independent doesn't go down very well amongst managerial types. Managers don't like people being independent. I remember I had been in the Irish yatra. I joined in England, and then in '79 I went to the Irish yatra. And I was quite an essential part of the Irish yatra for a few years. And then finally, after 10 years on the movement, I was sent to India. And I came first of all to Vrindavan, then we went to Puri, and then I went on padayatra. And the temple president told me, you can go for 6 months on padayatra. He gave me £100 spending money, and I went on padayatra. And I was fortunate in that I joined padayatra just before Agra, and we did the first ISKCON Brajmandal Parikrama in Vrindavan. Then we walked up through Delhi to the Himalayas. We did Chardham Yatra, we did Badrinath, Kedarnath, Yamunotri and Gangotri. And it took 6 months. My entire 6 months on Padayatra was basically Rajmandal Parikrama and then Himalayan Padayatra. It was so ecstatic, just walking through from you know, what's the name of that place? Meerut. Meerut is kind of like starting to get towards the hills. Then coming through Rishikesh, Haridwar, Rishikesh, and then walking up the Himalayas. It was just ecstatic, seeing all these sadhus, seeing all these ancient ashrams. And for me, it was like a revolution. In the West, I understood Krishna consciousness, and I knew that I'm supposed to be a devotee. Intellectually, I understood, yep, I have to surrender to Krishna, have to become Krishna conscious, have to do devotional service. But it was very difficult because the whole society surrounding me were, you know, all just karmis, and the devotees were just a handful. And I understood the theory, but it was a theory. And then when I came to India on Padayatra, I suddenly saw this Vedic culture, even though it's not very much of it existing still, but there was enough to make me understand that what Bhagavatam taught was very real. So after my 6 months on Padayatra, I came back to the temple in Europe, in Ireland, and I told my temple president, you know, I've spoken to Maharaj, and I want to go back on Padayatra. I want to stay in India. I want to live in India. And he was like, what is this independence? And I remember I was chanting japa in the temple room one morning, and I was trying to chant really nicely, you know, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I was doing really nice japa. And the temple president came up to me and he said, Hare Krishna, on my terms. Hare Krishna, on my terms. And he was basically saying that, you know, okay, you look like you're chanting Hare Krishna nicely, but it's because you're independent. Your independent nature. Why don't you just surrender, Prabhu? Surrender to your temple authority. What is this nonsense, independence? And I was like, and what am I going to do? So I said, Prabhu, you know, I told Maharaj that you would be upset with me wanting to leave the yatra. I said, but I told Maharaj that you are such a caliber of a devotee that if you understand that this is going to be the best for my Krishna consciousness, you'll let me go. And he was like, what can I say? Somehow or another, Krishna put the right words into my mouth and, you know, got me out of that situation, because he really didn't want me to go back. He was thinking, you know, I would go on Padayatra for 6 months. I'd get burnt out in India, because many of the devotees get burnt out in India. They can't handle it. It was like, I'll never want to go again, or at least, you know, maybe once a year for a few weeks. But the opposite happened. I fell in love with India. I just realized that I need to be in India for my Krishna consciousness to flourish. And so ultimately, you know, Krishna allowed me to come back to India. And so he let me go, and that was, so this independence. So Prabhupada wanted us to be independently thoughtful, and somehow or another I've been lucky in my Krishna consciousness in that I was able to search for my ikigai. I had you know, in ISKCON in the early days, we needed to do so many things, and the only people to do it were us. We couldn't hire anybody. The devotees had to do everything. And so I was able to find myself useful service in helping to spread Krishna consciousness in a practical way. And so much so that when I came to India, initially on Padayatra, then started doing architectural design and engineering, and then finally becoming a teacher. Things that I'd never ever contemplated that I would ever do, but somehow or another Krishna was kind to put me in situations where I was able to study, learn, and practice all these different things, and find my dharma, find my place in Krishna consciousness. So I feel very fortunate. I feel very lucky that I was able to come to Krishna consciousness and become fulfilled in my life in Krishna consciousness. And now I feel it's my duty to try and help inspire other people that, you know, Krishna consciousness, if you surrender to the process, Gaur Govinda Maharaj used to say that we should be very innocent like a child. And sometimes people think, if I'm innocent like a child, I'll be exploited. And in general, that's what we see in the material world. The children are innocent, they can be exploited. But if you're innocent in Krishna consciousness, Krishna won't protect you? Of course Krishna will protect you. If your inspiration is to become Krishna conscious, then being innocent like a child in Krishna consciousness, that is the ultimate, that's what surrender basically means. Surrendering means that you don't know, surrender means you don't know what the future holds. It could be, we contemplate, oh, maybe I should do this, or maybe I should do that, and we worry about what the result will be. Surrender means not worrying about the result, just putting your house up in the hands of Krishna and letting Krishna protect you. And when Krishna in your heart sees that you're doing that you're prepared to surrender to him, then he will protect. And he does. So this is the wonderful aspect of Krishna consciousness. Okay, so I'll stop there. Any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, for the class. I understand you are a teacher at the Mayapur Gurukula presently, right? You spoke of some history about our Gurukulas in Dallas and elsewhere. At the present moment, have we found a balance how to educate the students? You said they need to surrender to senior devotees to be able to learn. You gave the example of Dhruva Maharaj. So as teachers, I'm sure there are qualified teachers at our Gurukula. And have we found a balance how to train them properly, making them be attentive, be respectful towards the teachers, and also being able to impart Krishna consciousness in their hearts? Are we there yet, or is it still like work in progress?
There's, we have there's the need for education in several places. And apart from the Gurukula itself, like one of the original aspects of Gurukula is that education is given for free, right? So people say, why are you not teaching the kids for free? Why are you charging an amount of money for teaching the kids? But we have to understand that when the original Gurukulas were running in India, people understood the value of Brahminical culture. And the Vaishya class would freely donate to the Brahmanas, because they saw that the Brahmanas were selflessly giving themselves to the children. And like that, they were willing to donate very generously. And so there was no need to ask for any money, because naturally it was coming, because everyone understood the Dharma, everyone understood the importance of education and supporting education. What's happened in society today is it's become the opposite. Like, if you hear something's free, it's like, it's free, grab it! And everyone runs to grab whatever they can for free and give nothing. So the mentality has completely changed. Nowadays, no one understands the importance of Vedic culture. So, and that even extends to some devotee parents sometimes. They don't understand the value of devotee culture. So that means that basically you have to offer a higher degree of academics, even though the academics may not be essential for Krishna consciousness. It's expected. Nowadays, people expect that. And then they say, okay, the kids are learning, in Gurukula, what are they going to do when they leave? They've not got any qualifications, because you're not studying under Cambridge or whatever the accepted educational standard. What are they going to do? Prabhupada described that Gurukul was to train preachers, to train people that have to be devotees. And that the teacher's main requirement is to be a good devotee and to train the kids how to be good devotees. But now, and in order to do that, like for instance, Prabhupada told us that chanting Hare Krishna is enough. So people say, why do you have to teach all these mantras? What is the importance of these mantras? Why? Prabhupada said chanting Hare Krishna is enough. But we have to understand that when Prabhupada was saying that, it was in the very beginning of the movement when we were just bringing new devotees, and the most important thing was getting them to surrender to the process of Krishna consciousness. And we didn't want them to get, Prabhupada didn't want them to get distracted with things like yoga or even vegetarianism. He didn't stress those things. He stressed surrendering. So that is the important thing, is the surrendering process. So that we have to educate. So what are they going to do when they leave school? So Prabhupada originally wanted us to have farm communities, and then if we had farm communities, then the children could automatically fit into such a community, because in a farm, in a Vrindavan village, basically farm community means that varnashram is funded by agricultural activity. It's an agrarian economy. And agrarian economy means every profession it finds its roots in the agrarian economy. So farm communities, Vrindavan villages, would provide an outlet for Gurukul graduates. But we didn't do that. We haven't done that so far. We haven't provided an alternative, independent society, which is what Prabhupada wanted. So in that sense, the Gurukuls now are somewhat compromised, because neither all the parents understand, nor does the rest of the society understand, and we haven't provided an outlet for students to live a fulfilling life as devotees, where they can actually earn a living within a dharmic, economic system. So no, we haven't perfected things yet. We know how things should be done, but there's a need for education to be spread wider than just within the Gurukula. Within the society itself, we need to understand, it's described that any great religion becomes great through its children, through the children understanding the importance of the Dharma and upholding and fulfilling it for generations to come. But we're not really doing that. We've almost turned our back on the children. Very few people send their kids to Gurukula. Of course, it's understandable with all the abuse that took place. That's understandable. And of course, the abuse that took place was also based on the fact that we haven't followed the Dharma in our own society. We haven't taken the trouble to take care of the devotees in fully the way Prabhupada wanted us to. So there's plenty of work to be done.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay.
I was speaking to one, just final closing comment. I was speaking to one nice qualified teacher at the Gurukula, and he has the same opinion. And he said too much emphasis on child protection has taken away the need or the atmosphere to actually keep the students attentive. He said there is now a reverse situation where the teachers are being abused by children in different ways. And also, he also sees the importance of actually educating the parents equally, having some courses or classes for them as well, so that the students benefit from the parents understanding the need for Gurukula education, and they can actually do the right job for their own children. So I'm sure there are a lot of nice ideas that we probably need better leadership to actually put them into force.
Okay, thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Gaura Premanandi.